what we have in front of us on our agenda for tonight and make sure that we have the discussion that we need so that we're comfortable that we can act. Well, I wanted to give you a little bit of a background on what brings us to here, and this is Ed Foley, by the way, from the Planning Commission Chair, I'm supposed to announce that. Dairy Queen approached the city through me and ultimately Christine and I together in January about their desire to want to stay in the city of Seven Hills. So we had a meeting, and they had already done quite a bit of homework that demonstrates, I think, their seriousness. And they'd identified multiple choices of land that they thought could work out for them if it was viable. In that discussion, and as we went into that, we discovered that all the options required rezoning. There was nothing that would allow Dairy Queen to move, expand in its current location or move to other locations in the areas where they wanted to be, which is pretty much along Broadview Road from Pleasant Valley North, that wouldn't require rezoning. So we had that discussion, and things were just kind of, we were aware of their desire, and things kind of sat for a short period of time, and we all know what happened in March. The whole world changed for all of us. And then they were talking with the city, beyond Christine and I, they were also talking with others within the city. And when we knew that Ruby Tuesdays became available, one of the things that came up was, would that be a suitable site for them? So they pursued that option and came back rather excited that that could be the option that would be best for them. That led to, on June 8th, there being a pre-application meeting here at City Hall. And that's following the guidelines of 941 that we have that says that there can be a pre-application meeting with anyone that's considering doing something. And in that pre-application meeting, which is chaired by the chair, and we had there the fire department, we had the building department, we had the city engineer, we had a nice group of people to just talk through with them what were trying to accomplish. So this is, and no detailed plans or anything, but just conceptually. They also had someone that represented Dairy Queen beyond the owner that would be this property. That conversation, I want to share with you how I led into that meeting because I think it's relevant background for us as we consider what we're considering tonight. One of the things that I wanted them to know, because I think, you know, we have a book of ordinances, and I don't know that when someone tries to do business with us that we make too many assumptions about what they should know. So what I wanted to do is really help them understand why we were having the pre-application meeting and then give them the relevant background that I thought would be important in moving forward. Understanding that this is a business that has been in Seven Hills since the 50s and wants to remain in Seven Hills, which I place a high premium on that. To me, when you want to upgrade and remain in the same city that you're in, it's like a high compliment. So it was for me, a very important conversation to have with great dignity and respect, because this was someone that came forward and said, we want to make a sizable investment in what right now is a grass overgrown restaurant. So I mean, this was an important conversation to have. So what I gave them, what I thought was the relevant background, I went back to the 2002 master plan, and that was an 18-month effort working with the Cuyahoga County planners. Very well done work. It took like 18 months. We met here once a month. They did a lot of the groundwork in between. And some of the things that came out of that plan, there was a focus area D, which was Broadview Road. And in Broadview Road, they recommended that we create an auto service zone. That happened in '05. They recommended that the confusing zoning on Broadview Road, and there was a lot of parcels that didn't know what they were. You know, it was kind of a confusing zoning map. They recommended that be clarified. So the new Broadview Road Development District, which this property that we're looking at tonight falls under, that was that zoning category that we're talking about tonight and considering a modification to it. That was created in '06. So that was a consciously done effort to make sure that the zoning was clarified so it was less ambiguous than it had been before. Other things that came out of that was the new sign for the city. So you see at Civic Drive, we got the new sign. That came out of that. Trying to focus on office, even on Broadview Road. So that led to the medical building and the credit union there. When that became a possibility, we jumped all over that because that's consistent with the plan. And also develop a new process for considering development and site design plans called 941. So the very ordinance that brought us together for planning a preliminary planning meeting was created in this 941 ordinance. And that was in 2008. So when we got together, I gave that a little bit of a background there, and then I shared with them that the purpose of 941 was to make sure that, and I read a little bit of it, that is to ensure that there's compatibility between uses, and that we're really trying to enhance and make sure our city continues to develop, and as it goes through changes, it improves rather than regresses. It's important to have a process to ensure that that happens. In the preliminary application meeting, I told them that nothing that was talked about there had any kind of power of decision-making. It was just designed to make sure that we were all clear. There's a lot of things they have to comply with if they ultimately submit. And so we talked through that. They had some very high-level things, drawings. We did confirm their intent to knock down the building, their intent to rebuild the building that would, according to what they believe would be the highest standard of Dairy Queen, meeting their new design standards. Very few in the Northeast Ohio area would meet those standards. They're looking to put in that caliper. And then one of the things I talked with them about, and this is found in 941, I thought the Planning Commission would have a particular interest in making sure that traffic was well understood, given that this would come with a drive-through. We know that the Dairy Queen has a very healthy drive-through. It's something, and their current situation is a little dicey. So we'd want to see the traffic, how get on and off Broadview Road, how you'd stack up the cars in the drive-through. We would be very interested in that. That comes out of the fact that in the 941, one of the things that we can consider very strongly is traffic. A professional analysis of traffic, so all that comes in here. The other thing and it comes also in parking and circulation. We want to make sure that parking and circulation through the site would be considered. And I also wanted them to know that this is at the corner of Civic Drive, our new road, one of our newer roads, that's designed to reflect that coming out of the master plan, that having a focus for Seven Hills with the new sign. So if you're at the corner of Main and Broadway for Seven Hills, which is Civic Drive and Broadview, the building has got to be something that would fit aesthetically what our hopes and desires would be for the city. Now, those standards are spoken to in 941. We don't prescribe, a certain one style, like you got to meet some kind of Roman this or Greek this. I mean, we don't do that, but we allow for a compatible palette of colors and materials. But we've specified somewhat what that has to be. And so we wanted to make it real clear that our desire would be to make sure that the building would certainly have to meet those standards. It was a good meeting. Following the meeting, I got a call from Dairy Queen a few days later. They wanted me to pass along their commitment that they would work on colors and materials and make sure the building was something that we would be proud of. That's their desire as well. And I wanted to make sure that they understood that I was taking that comment and going to pass it along. They have, from what I'm hearing now, they have purchased the property. They have made a real strong commitment to make sure that this is the kind of Dairy Queen that the family would want to pass along. So I thought the pre-application meeting was a good one, and it led us then to the conversations that our assistant law director has had to shepherd behind the scenes about how would you now, if this goes forward, deal with the Broadview Road zoning in that section 2 that has in it a prohibited use being fast food. So if you want to allow Dairy Queen to move in there, they would have to have the change in zoning for Zone 2 of Broadview Road to allow for their business to exist. And that would mean, if you look at it from the simplest way to look at it, I think, is that it allows for lots of things, it prohibits things, and one of the things it prohibits today, it says fast food. And so this would be a situation where, when we look at what we're being asked to act on tonight, it would be eliminating the word fast food and then having that go to the voters to see if they concur with that zoning change. So that's the nexus of what we're talking about tonight, is it is a Dairy Queen thing, and it's not always that. When a developer comes forward and says, if you rezone, I might want to do something, they may run away and you never see them again. But this is a little different in my mind because there's a commitment behind the scenes. They have shared their purchase plans and their desires to purchase, and they have sent some documentation forward. They're an existing business in the city. So I think this is a little different than having some outfit from somewhere else come in and say, if you rezone this, we will come. You know, it's a little different category for me. But I wanted to give you all that background on this because I think that's all relevant for what we're here talking about tonight. I mean, we're all, you know, coronavirus lockdown and all that, and it's kind of hard to connect things at times, but this started in January. The options were out there, but they all required rezoning and they weren't ideal. And then what emerged was out of coronavirus. I think whether it's the timing or it just happened or whether coronavirus was the final straw, I don't know, but Ruby Tuesdays closed and the corporate office put it up for sale and Dairy Queen has made the commitment to buy it. So that's what I know that I think would be relevant for the background that I wanted to share with you, because anything I do, I want to tell you what I'm doing. And I will say that the partnership we've had with the law director, assistant law director here, because all of this has to be put into a timeline that would allow for this rezoning to go on the ballot in November. And that timeline is a legal requirement. So it's kicked to us from council. We have to, make our decision. We have to put a report together on that decision that goes back to council. And then that's baked into the cake of what ultimately becomes the language that you see in what we have here tonight, which would be the language that would go to the voters. I'm going to pause there and see if you have any questions for me. I took notes. I wanted to make sure I gave you the whole load.
Mr. Chairman, this is David Sporer. I have a couple questions.
Sure.
Are they currently grandfathered in that zone? Because if they just want to move operations, but fast food is currently prohibited, but it appears they would already qualify as fast food.
Where they exist, yes.
But since they've been here since 1950 or so,
Yeah.
They would have been grandfathered
To stay exactly
to stay as they are
Right.
despite the change in zoning. I'm just wondering, when you were reviewing the master plan, what was the specific, was there an indication of any specific concern for fast food in that area? Was it a traffic issue, for example? Or were there other considerations that we should keep in mind here?
I'll just share with you, now, I was on the committee that worked on that, so I mean, I have a little, but that was a long time ago, but I will share with you what I remember. There was conversations about making sure that Broadview Road had a kind of a methodology to its development. And one of the concerns was to make sure that the auto stuff stayed south, And I think the fast food at that time was heavily leveraged south. So there probably was a desire at one time to say, let's keep the fast food down where there used to be a Wendy's and there was Burger King and there was
Arby's.
So I think that was the zone down there. Dairy Queen broke, because they've been here so long, they're north of Pleasant Valley. So this is just I don't think we ever said it's we wanted to encourage the development. Now what's happened since then is, Myers comes along and things begin to change. But I think at that time, if I remember right, it was just designed to say we want to make sure that we're comfortable what things would develop where. And the definition of fast food continues to change. What is it? What's casual food, fast food, what's, other different names. Dairy Queen didn't resist saying, I think well, they tried to resist a little bit, but they're fast food. Even though this is going to be the grill with the big inside where you can sit down and eat and all that, it still is fast food. But, to answer your question, I can't say specifically that we said we never want fast food there, but I think at the time they said we would prefer to have fast food to the south and not to the north of Rockside Road. So that's why the ordinance was written that way. This would allow for fast food. Now, what's happened since then, too, is that Broadview Road has developed since then. So the pattern of what can be on Broadview, back when this was done, there was no Aldi's Plaza, there was, that was all kind of vacant land, too. So the pattern has been broken somewhat. But it's a restaurant now, this would move it into a restaurant that would probably fit the category of fast food. That's really what's being proposed. They had an architect looked at the existing building and said, this existing building will not work for us. So, and frankly, that was an encouragement to me, because I think that the building's quality is not the best. I think we'd be better with them, with a new building going up. Yes?
Are you done, David?
Actually, well, I have one more question, but maybe it's
Go
kind
ahead.
of getting,
Please.
too far ahead. And that is, I love fast food, and that's great. If there's no specific reason, other than just how the plan was designed, like 20 years ago, or, 15 years ago, is there a concern of getting too much fast food on that strip of road, such that there'd be a lot of drive-through exits feeding into that artery? Or is that not a meaningful issue in that part of the road?
If you look at where Zone 2 goes, it starts at Hillside and it goes, I'm going to look at the assistant law director. How far down does it go in Zone 2? I don't have my map.
Pleasant Valley.
No. A minor technical difficulty. Assistant Law Director Christine Tobin.
Yeah, this is Christine Tobin. In answer to your question, this ordinance proposes to remove the prohibition against fast food in Parcel 2 of the Broadview Road Development District. And Parcel 2 runs from the Ruby Tuesday, from the City Drive, Civic Drive, north to Hillside, except if you look at the zoning map, there's a little cutout for the very corner at Hillside that's not in Parcel 2, that's still residential, what's literally on the corner. And then to the east of that lot is also Parcel 2. Okay, so Broadview Road Development District has 4 subdivisions to it, and this ordinance discusses just a change in Parcel 2. Does that answer your question? Hopefully?
This is David Spore. Oh, yeah, so that answers Ed's question. And it clarifies my question, which is, what area of Broadview Road are we looking at, and what are the realistic, maybe unintended consequences of changing the zoning, at least with respect to traffic in that particular area? And that would be a question, of course, maybe to anybody, about whether there's any thoughts or information on traffic issues. I know you said, Ed, that you spoke with Dairy Queen about traffic generally, but if there's any more detail on that.
Mr. Chairman, just before you go on, I just wanted to point out, if it hadn't already been stated, that if Dairy Queen had indicated a desire to expand, and in their current location, they would also need a zoning change. They would not be permitted to expand, even though they're already there operating. Thank you.
So, we're going to compare this Ed Foley again. When we met with them originally, one of the things that we had to share with them was, one of their options was to try and get the land that's to the north of them right now. And if they did that and expanded, then they realized that I have to go for rezoning anyway. That requires rezoning. This does not change the rezoning of that property. That remains the way it is. This is for Zone 2 of Broadview Road, which was my Hillside through Civic Drive, which is right now fairly developed. So this is almost like a redevelopment of a restaurant into something that would be hopefully viable for the long haul.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this is Terry McCafferty. So that kind of leads me into not so much a question, but a statement, so that you couldn't wind up on the existing Dairy Queen property for another fast food restaurant. It would have to be something else.
No.
Because unless they rezone that particular piece of property is what I'm, so you're really not winding up with an additional
Correct.
dump into Broadview Road, if you will. And of course, with the coronavirus, we've seen Dairy Queen be a little different than usually, than it was in the past, as they've backed out on the Broadview Road all the way down to Pleasant Valley sometimes.
right.
Which is understandable because people want to eat their ice cream.
A diversion.
Now, I had one other question. Now, I'm not that familiar with the Dairy Queen setup. Are they all company stores, or is this a franchise? Do you know? Does anybody, you know, I know McDonald's go both ways, different restaurants go both ways. They can be company stores, or they could be franchise stores. Is it, you're dealing though with Dairy Queen corporate?
They had a corporate representative with them, but my understanding was that the father and son that owns it right now,
Okay.
they're the ones that are making the loan and making
Okay.
the investment in the property. So I get, this is a highly, you know, ownership-driven.
That's what I'm asking,
Yeah,
basically,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
that they're, whether corporate or, are they local residents,
Yes,
do you know?
yeah, yeah.
They're local residents as well.
And they make it a point to say that we're kind of, our view of Dairy Queen is framed a little bit by what we have. And they wanted to make it very clear that the DQ 2010 is sort of what's on Sprague Road right now,
Yes.
okay? This is the newer generation from that.
Yeah,
So they're trying to help us understand that their desire is to put in what they believe would be a very attractive and desirable business in the community that, that they believe will be good civic partners. And they have a laundry list of things they share, but they can back it up with quite a history of being good civic partners. So
Good.
I think they're a legitimate group.
Are there traffic issues involved here, or?
Well, we're going to ask for the study to be done, so they do have two ways in and out of the property from the plaza, just as Ruby Tuesdays did.
Okay,
But if you're going to knock the building down, it opens you up for redesign. And they made a commitment to make sure that the drive-through could be stacked in a way that it would be, not go near the street. They said they'd be open to whatever configuration we thought would be best, but they know that traffic is a very large concern that we have with the property. And they told me they would cooperate in whatever study to help determine what's the best way to handle traffic that we would, they would need to do.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If I may. This is Peter Bodie. I actually recently just helped finish a traffic study over at Ridge Park Square for the owners of that shopping complex, quite a larger undertaking than a single parcel, but it kind of gave me a little insight into how these things are configured and the different multi-stakeholders that are kind of brought into the fold, and how to really look at walkability, communicate, you know, the community connectability and all of that. So I would suggest, when talking to them about the parking circulation and the traffic study, to have them work very closely with the Aldi complex over there, and ensure that the circulation kind of fits into more of like a traffic master plan of the whole development district here. And also to consider, especially having the hike and bike trail, the walkability, bikeability of kind of the entire district there, to ensure that if people wanted to take their bikes from anywhere in Seven Hills that can connect to it, they'd be able to go to Dairy Queen or any of the businesses that are right there, and they wouldn't be hindered by blockades that may get put up or whatnot because of development for this kind of thing, so.
Good comments. You did generate a thought. One of the things I did talk with them about is this is sort of a terminus in Seven Hills that's going to go across the street and go all the way to Watershed.
Yeah,
And so one of the things that they said, I said we would maybe want to talk about bike racks and places for, you know, it to look like you're stopping at a point that you're going to continue on. And I think they're open for all of that. And if we're going to have a blank piece of property, I think it's a real opportunity to see what we could work with them to do.
yeah, and that development's gonna be happening in about 2022.
Yeah,
so it's pretty quick.
Pretty
Uh,
quick, pretty quick.
I'm actually my organization is raising the final funds for that, that development of that trail on the other side of Broadview Road to connect that over. And there's also talk of connecting it the other way.
Sure.
Over to Hillside, so there's more connectability. This is kind of a good spot for an ice cream place. You know, it's got the connectability, the recreation, you have the recreation center, the bike,
Sure.
all the ball fields and everything. They think they're definitely making the right choice staying in Seven Hills and where they're at, because this is where I would put an ice cream shop.
All right, anybody, any other comments? Good? All right. Well, I just wanted to make sure we were comfortable, and what we're voting on tonight would be the changing it so that fast food is permitted, which means you're taking fast food out of the not permitted category, and the recommendation for this to go forward to the voters so that they can have their voice in whether this is appropriate or not. So I see that as the way that I would describe the two pieces of ordinances that are in front of us tonight. If we can go quickly through the agenda, then we're going to start our meeting. We know that that's the focus of tonight, and that's the time urgent thing we have to act on is what we just discussed. Is there, I looked at my contingency updates, my action register. The only thing that I had out there hanging, because there hasn't been a lot of activity, is the issue with the storage sheds where we left our last meeting. Has that gone anywhere? I'm going to ask our council liaison. This is where we had to consider whether storage sheds could be placed anywhere based on the ordinance. We wrote the report to say we're not comfortable with an overreach to that point. We would suggest there be some, level of controls. And I know there was some things being talked about that would still get some controls, but would allow for some more flexibility if there is a tree root or a rock or water or whatever in someone's backyard. Has that gone anywhere?
This is Council Liaison Tom Snitsky. We've got a new building commissioner now. So that kind of ended with the previous commissioner. The other thing is that, and this was thinking about this at a higher level, that quite honestly, Ed, you put the thought into my head. We have a variance process here that if it doesn't work where the resident would like to put it, they can always get a variance. And we were trying to streamline it so that that wouldn't become quite as required all the time. But sometimes when you try to make something easier, you also make it more complicated. So the longer I looked at it and the longer I talked to people about it and the longer I thought about it, the more I thought, yeah, I think we'll just, at this time, I can clue in the new building commissioner what we were
Okay.
talking about, but at this time, I think we just kind of let it sit.
That's it for now. Okay, very good.
I had one other question. I don't know if they all have some
No,
of this.
yeah, I've got all the pictures. I wasn't going to pass them, or you
All
can
right.
pass them around if you want.
I mean, I could just,
Yeah.
if you're interested, I've got, this is not going to be your typical Dairy
No,
Queen.
and
This is
and
going
that
to be
and that
grill
may
and
not
chill.
be, that may not be anything like it looks too. So I get a little nervous when we pass around things
Right,
that
right.
maybe.
It's all very preliminary,
Very
but I was
premature.
very impressed with the fact that this looks a lot more like a restaurant. It is a drive-through, but it looks a lot more like a restaurant than a typical ice cream parlor, so.
One of the roles that we have played since 941 became a reality is that we are the safeguarders of what materials and how things look in the city. And we've got to make sure that I can drive around the city and show you the things that we said had to be, that if we hadn't said they had to be, they wouldn't be. Where brick is, where it's not, where vinyl fences are instead of wood, and you go on down the list. So we want to make, and this is at the corner of Civic Drive and Broadview Road with our sign, so we want to really make, they were talking a pergola, we're talking about a way for the bike path. We want to really make sure this is pristine. Very good. There being nothing else, can we start our meeting? We're going to be, did everybody have a chance to take a look at the minutes? Because when we get to that point, I'll be asking for a motion and a second on that, okay? I read them over. All right. I'd like to call our we can take a quick break. Todd, we need to take a quick break because he needs to YouTube transition.